Imagine whatever it is in the night or the day. And then you're right.
I think that means you can hear me. I see a green line moving. Say hello, Data.
Hello, Data.
I think they can hear you as well.
Hello, Data.
I think.
Yep. Yes, they can.
Yep.
I'm gonna drop I'm gonna drop my mic a little bit because.
You want me to do it? I can do it from this end. That way I can adjust it as the chat needs. How's that?
Oh, okay.
Because I can hear you perfect. We'll just adjust it down for the chat. Because I could talk on top of my mic, but that means coming down here, and I don't want to do that. So I talk right here. I'll try to stay in front of it for the most part. How is everybody tonight? We have a
hello, Cryptic. Hello, Cryptic. Hello, Malevolent Rider. Hello, any lurkers in the background?
I'm not seeing any yet, but the night is still young. Everybody, hey Vash, we have an interesting one. How did we avoid this topic, Data? Because it's even been on our intro since the show started.
I think it was like the elephant in the room. We didn't see it.
You know, I think that must be it. But we do have to discuss this. Now, you and I have a pretty open viewpoint. I can see a few different sides of this, but...
No, you don't. You don't believe.
I'm kind of...
You want to believe.
Skeptical. I'm on the edge of believing, and maybe this show will do it.
I doubt it. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. So, if nobody knows what we're going to talk about today... It's that damn UFO in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. We've been staring at it for weeks now and haven't discussed why it's there. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean it was always a plan to do it eventually, and you used it as a prop. But yeah, we never got to it. We did all these other things.
I do have to say,
and I mean,
turned out
again, UFOs are another one of those topics that you could have multiple shows, multiple weeks, so you could have a whole series talking about.
Let's try something, because I do believe in alien life. So let's first discuss alien life, okay? Now, when I think alien life and I pick on people when they all have their streams, I immediately think of one organism that can exist anywhere that we know of. The tardigrade.
1 second. Malevolent. I thought the dump was pretty crazy. It reminded me of a little bit combination of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and what was it? There was an the name I forget the name, but yeah, it was pretty wild. It definitely was pretty wild. And Vash, um, we talked about QAnon a couple episodes ago, but I'm sure we'll come around to it again.
Yeah, the next
Uh,
one's definitely going to be more in depth. I'm going to have to take more time and really take a deep look at
yeah,
it. But today we're
it's
going to talk
it's
about
funny.
aliens.
It's funny because when Num and I hooked up, we started talking and whatnot. There's a lot of things that Num really was a complete virgin to, and QAnon was one of them.
Yeah,
He had literally no clue what the hell I was. He said Q. It wasn't that godlike alien in Star Trek. So yeah, it was an eye opening experience for him
and I
when it
don't
came to.
mind learning. I absolutely love learning. You don't know what you don't know. How do you know what to look up if you don't know what you're looking for? You don't know what
Exactly.
you don't know.
You right. You don't know what you don't know.
You know? That works perfect. I should add that to that slogan. Um, let's clarify. I believe there are aliens. I forget what the is called, but there is an
Well, I
equation, the
mean,
Drake
you know,
equation. The
right,
Drake
but the
equation.
equation is basically infinite, and if it's infinite, then the number is also infinite. So,
Right. So,
be that as it may, it's got to be a positive.
right. And I believe that there should be the Drake equation, real quick rundown, is like is it 7 data points or 8 data points that
And
identify
it
the possibility of life in the universe based on multiple data points.
well, yeah, I mean, it goes into like stars, and then how many planets, stars,
How many planets have
planets,
water,
how
how
many
many,
other
yeah.
planets, right, and on and on and
And
on.
then how
But I
many
mean,
would have intelligent life. Now,
and we're expanding our definition of intelligent life too, because when that equation came into effect, we believed that you had to have water to have life. Well, I think we've proved that even on Earth that you can have life in the driest of deserts. So yeah. So anyways,
so to follow the Drake equation, there's what's called the Fermi paradox. And I love this. I've talked about this before. The Fermi paradox is the equation or the possibility that a species that reaches a certain intelligence level, the ability to destroy itself, doesn't survive that ability. So they inevitably destroy themselves trying for something. So you could say we're right on that brink, but are we? It's hard to tell what's happening when it's happening until you look back and realize what happened.
Vash, that astronomer, the one who did the television series the first time, his quote was, "Being as large as the universe is, wouldn't it be crazy? Wouldn't it be a huge waste of space if we were the only life in it?"
It
You know,
comes from the movie Contact. I believe Carl Sagan wrote it.
Carl Sagan said it.
I
Yeah,
believe that was also in my original messages to you when you said, let's talk about UFOs. I was like, oh, let's talk about da da da. Do you remember the comment from Contact? I believe
yeah.
it was Carl Sagan. Um, with all that space out there and all those stars, it's hard to believe that we're the only ones out there. Something along those lines. And I
Well,
absolutely loved that part of the movie.
our little our little neck of the woods in our universe also is relatively young compared to the rest. So I mean, yeah, our sun is 4 billion years old, but there are solar systems that are older than ours. There's got to be civilizations that have been around for millions of years, not just hundreds of thousands of years. And who's to say that we don't have it completely 100% wrong also when it comes to our history? I mean, there's always this thing kind of in the shadows, where an advanced civilization was once on this planet that was completely destroyed by a flood. Be it the Atlantis, or the things written in on those tablets of stories of the Bible, but this was pre-Bible. This was it the Sumerians. So I mean,
There's so
maybe
much to
we,
look into. Let
yeah, I
me
mean, maybe
quickly
as a species, or as a completely different species, we already left this planet.
real quick, and I wanted to discuss that, but I was hoping to get to later in the show for that because I was leading into it. Hold on, Malevolent Rider, I do see that comment. I haven't looked into it yet for me to care to change it. I do apologize. It's been a busy week leading up to a very hard-working weekend, and hopefully next week will be a little smoother. There also will not be a great debate on Monday morning. I'm a bit busy through Monday. I'm glad I was able to make today's show for the record.
Yeah, he had internet issues, and then he also had a garage sale
I'm still working
today.
on those
So,
internet issues. I haven't gotten an answer to the job being completed. Something about the ISP's drop going to the tap that my signal comes from. Something about it is dropping signal periodically, so I don't have a steady internet signal. So you notice how I don't crackle all the time, but sometimes
you
you'll
have
tell me I'm
cable or
popping.
you have DSL?
I have cable, but I'm
Oh,
about to start looking because I'm a little upset with my cable provider right now.
right.
But to move back to the topic, I forget what it was that I wanted to say.
UFOs.
What was that?
UFOs.
UFO. Well, right, UFOs. I
Unidentified flying objects, and USOs, unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah, we can deal with the fact that there's a possibility that another civilization, if they can breach space like that, could easily live in our oceans without us knowing.
Right.
Obviously, and I really want to quickly go over this because we all have a basic understanding of space. Hopefully, at least somewhat to understand this. That as you move closer to light speed, your perception of time slows down, whereas those who you left behind at, if you leave Earth and you reach light speed and you travel for 20 years, 100 years will pass on Earth. I think, isn't it like 5 to 1
Well,
ratio?
the physics say we can never achieve light speed, because the closer you get to light speed, the more mass your ship and you and everything in it is created. So that means you have to come up with that much more energy to be able to push it closer and closer, which, you know, could be as retarded as when the scientists were saying if we traveled over 50 miles per hour in our steam trains across the United States, you would have a heart attack and die.
Right. Exponential speed increase. We all know that as long as you make the speed increase at a rate which is viable for humans to make that speed increase, as well as the decrease in speed once you begin to slow down, then we should be able to handle it. But cognitive thought threw me for a loop, saying that somebody to handle the high speed, the vibrations, or I forget exactly how he worded it, would have
Yeah,
to have no
it's something about
skeleton.
jellyfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little weird. I'm
It
not sure
was,
how.
but it really made me think about that.
I think he's thinking. I'm thinking he's thinking that
He's
if
thinking
we
about
were to
exactly
like,
what you and I were just talking about. When
yeah,
you
but
get
he
into a jet, you don't get into a jet and do the speed of sound.
right exactly. In other
You
words,
have to
he's thinking
move
like
towards it.
he's well. Not only that, but he's like thinking using the technology that we have available.
But
But
for
we
what
can
he's
see
saying, let's say, for instance, you get to moving at a fast speed, a speed at which, if you were to, air quotes, hit the brakes, that would cause probably some sort of inertial damage to you for slowing down at a fast pace, just like speeding up too fast would do. So
Right.
you'd get almost a
The
whiplash. So
right. It's
the point there is, before the tangent of obviously traveling at light speed and its incomprehensible comparisons, once you travel closer to the speed of light, time, let's call it time dilation, time perception changes. So the people on Earth experience 100 years, you experience 20. So it
right.
takes you 20 years to get to the next planet. 100 years has gone by on Earth. And I'm saying 20 years traveling at the speed of light. 20 light years to get to the quote unquote the next possibly viable planet.
Again,
100
these are
years.
numbers we're pulling out of our butt.
Yes, these are numbers we're pulling out of our ass, but let's use
We're
these
mon-
ass numbers that the scientists throw out there as tentative thought to what we're thinking. And
we're
I'm not.
monkeys. We're using bananas to count up these numbers when there are probably civilizations that can cross the entire galaxy in a snap of a finger.
Right, and we'll get there, but hold on. In order for us, at our potential, to go speak to and find another civilization and come back would call for, at the speed of light, 40 years worth of travel. In which nearly, and my ratio could be off, at a 5-to-1 ratio, nearly 200 years have passed by on Earth. What
Right.
advancements have we made on Earth? And we look at the phenomenon where we can, every decade or so, send a satellite or a probe that will catch up and surpass the previous satellite or probe.
Okay, can I just interject for a second? You just mentioned something. The advancements here on Earth. I don't know if you've noticed. I know I've noticed. I know other
You're gonna
people
say
have
what
noticed.
I was thinking as you started saying. I realized what you're gonna say, so go for it.
Okay, well, it seems to me and other people that we have been held back. I mean, if you think about it, truly, we're using technology, even our latest lifter, rockets, that one that NASA came up with, the heavy lift rocket, and all these. This is all technology from the 60s, 50s, 40s. This is again burning stuff. It's like it's technology that's right out of the caves, flame, fire. It's caveman technology.
Fire
And it seems
lift. Fire create
and
heat. Heat lift.
if you okay, we like my dad was born in 1904. My mom was born in 1919. Her life, she saw no flight to Wright brothers all the way up to a 747, all the way up to the space shuttle. And ever since that, it's like we've stopped. Now, the fastest plane ever built was the SR-71 Blackhawk. This thing looks like it came right out of the Batman cartoon. This thing was designed in the 50s. So in other words, when a brand new 57 Chevy was in the dealership, these guys, these oil slicked back nerdy pocket protector guys with slide reels, not even a computer, but slide rules, designed this plane that was capable of Mach 3, unbelievable altitude, craziness, absolute craziness. And we mothballed that, our military mothballed that, and we don't have something to replace it? Are you kidding me?
Oh,
Do you
I'm
honestly
sure
believe that?
all we have to do is look at the designs. A lot of things For instance, a car design comes out roughly 3 to 5 years before the car gets released, and the car gets released the year before of its year. Then look at jets.
I'm I'm just saying we were so ahead in the 50s.
Yeah,
We were
you're
making
right. We've stagnated. Yes, our
well,
technology, the speed, and the
but have
processing
we?
have
But have
increased,
we? In other
but
words, what I'm trying to say is what we know is physics, and what we know is atomic energy, and what we know is aerodynamics has stagnated. But is there something behind the scenes that is 50, 100 years ahead of us?
yeah,
That's key.
that's an interesting
That's
question.
well, that's the secret. That's the thing that's keeping UFOs from common knowledge, from the man on the street. Because if a UFO can do what it does, what we see it does, we know it breaks physical laws. We know it taps into energies that we have no clue. And all the people that have investigated this, and all the people that have come forward, and we're talking about people in the military, people in the top secret government projects, people in top secret commercial, company projects. They've all come forward and they've said that we've tapped into this something called 0 point energy. The even if you think that we invented it, that it didn't come from aliens, fine. Then Tesla actually invented it. That's fine too. The reason we're prevented on using it is because the big money, big bank, big oil, big energy doesn't want it to come out.
Hmm. So this was sort of leading into something else I was going into. I love the tangents though because tangents are interesting. Are you keeping up with the tangents, chat? Everybody's just sitting back and listening. I appreciate that. You guys just sit there listening. Stay tuned. We're gonna have weird, exciting stuff. We can go back to a video put out by Thunderfoot. Please tell me you watch Thunderfoot, so I don't feel like the only nerd.
I watch Thunderfoot.
His
He kind
science
of like
videos are great.
he kind of like beats the dead horse. I prefer his
Yeah.
experiments than his what his other stuff. But
Okay.
I see him. I watch him.
I've watched a whole bunch of his, and I'm sure you've seen the one I'm about to talk about discussing satellite telescopes and our ability to see across the universe, across the
Right.
galaxy. We can see so many things and we can get crystal clear pictures. But
We actually can see into the past
right. But
because it's so far away that light travels X amount of the deal.
absolutely. And the weird crisp thing is, and this gets into something you were saying, so feel free to go off on that tangent. If something were right next to us, let's say just outside the moon, and following some sort of orbit near or around the outside of the moon, we would never know. We'd never be able to see it. We'd never know
Not
it
with
was there. Hold on, go ahead and chat.
not with that equipment, but
Myself.
it's funny you should mention the moon. There are a couple YouTubers that set up very big telescopes in their backyard and wherever, and set up pretty decent camera equipment and do live pics of the moon. And some of them have come up with some unbelievable footage. I mean, really gobsmack, unbelievable footage that you would not. I mean, seeing it, seeing it is believing it. Are you there? Oh, he must be talking on his phone. Yeah, I mean, Who's in chat? Oh, let's see. Mal's in chat. You back?
I'm back now that everybody can hear
Okay.
me as
So
usual. Sorry about that. I didn't know my phone
what
was
I
going to
was
ring.
saying, you mentioned the moon, and I said there's a couple of YouTubers. I think there's like a total of 4 or 5 that have set up really big telescopes in their backyard or whatever, and hook them up to camera equipment and do live pics of the moon. And we're talking about really close zooms of the moon and the edge of the moon and whatnot. And they've come up with some unbelievable things. I mean, gobsmack, you would have to see to believe things.
Really? Funny
Like
you should
like
say that because
like like UFOs coming out of craters and flying across the surface. Like
really,
like
how do you hold on?
things.
Hold on. I want to ask you a question. Do you know
Okay.
how far in they're zooming? Because my a family member of mine who would be more than happy if I asked him to help out one night and figure this out or take a look has a telescope that very easily and very clearly showed the entire circumference of the solar flare with the lens for us to be able to look at it. And he recorded it. Now, I don't
The
think he
solar
YouTubes it. Yeah, the solar
solar.
flare a few months back that we didn't have directly over the northern United States, but it
You're
was.
not that
Or not flare,
not
the
flare,
eclipse.
eclipse. Yeah.
Eclipse, I'm sorry. I
Well, I
feel
mean
like it.
that's
Idiot. Numbskull.
yeah, that's a different thing
But
entirely. But
he
yeah,
can. We zoomed in and we watched the eclipse. He zoomed it in to the extent of the eyepiece, but I'm sure he could have gone in a little more. So how far in are these people zooming? Is it like are you?
I mean they are literally zooming into the edge of the moon. In other words, they can zoom in. Uh, I'm talking to, dude. If you
You're
saw this
talking. They're
video,
zooming right into the surface, like
you
as if you were
saw
looking at
this
New York
video,
City from the
you
top
can
of a
see
plane.
you can see three saucer shaped dark objects coming up out of a crater and literally going up the crater's edge, over the crater's lip, and going across the surface and disappearing.
I think I've seen that video. I am pretty
Okay.
sure I've seen that video.
There's another one where it shows a object in orbit of the moon, and it's literally firing rockets.
Hey,
In
a
other words, you
wild
can
fox
literally
appears.
see you could see the flames on and off, on and off, on and off. You could see it or changing direction and rotating. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Ryder, you're right. We're 30 minutes in. There's no count on this show. We decided this is an open-ended show with a minimum and maximum time allowance. So
Welcome, Wild Fox.
it appeared. Here's
Well,
here's a
it
thought to
appears
have.
Wild Fox appeared.
Here's a thought to have. Now, can I believe there is intelligent life other than Earth?
Out there.
Yes. Can
Well,
I
I mean,
believe it's
there's
close to us?
there's barely intelligent life here, and we're
Yeah.
sending people in space. So
Hold on. We'll get there. Can I believe there's intelligent life non
non-terrestrial.
non-terrestrial. I was looking for can I believe there's extraterrestrial, but non-terrestrial life on Earth or around Earth. Yeah. But the reason it's so hard to believe is because of the information being maybe purposefully clouded. But let's look at something Neil deGrasse Tyson said. And
No.
Hold
I
on.
will never. Ever since Neil deGrasse Tyson is
How about something he pointed out about science that is correct, and you can make this comparison. So we'll leave him.
I'd
out.
rather. Oh yeah, no. I'd rather listen to what's his name, the other one, the one with the Japanese guy with the white hair.
Oh, I don't know.
You know who I'm talking about.
If you look
the
at
other
the distinctions between us and a primate, it's roughly what is it, a couple of strands of DNA. It's like 1.5% genetic difference between us and certain monkeys. Okay?
And
So then you take another species. What percent difference would it take for that species to be not equally advanced, but more advanced than us?
you do also realize that not only do we have ape genetics, but we have lizard genetics, fish genetics.
Well,
Birds
right.
are lizard
But
genetics.
if you take the next closest species that we can somewhat
Oh
communicate
yeah,
with,
I
interact
know that.
with,
Yeah,
and think
it's like
about the level that we put them at compared to ourselves. And then think about what if there was another species that were at that 1.5% difference in the upward favor. But I took that and I thought about it a few different times. What if there was a couple of them and they were a few times over that 1.5% difference? It could only be an infinitesimal few changes that total like 2.5% difference in biology or chemistry, DNA, RNA, whatever it is that makes them up, that makes them similar or different than us. It could be very, very little. Maybe a little more than the difference between us and a monkey. How how would that change the way and their ability to advance? How what
I don't think it has anything to do with it.
you don't think that
No,
the way the species advanced.
no. Genetics is a completely different thing. In other words, that's like talking about, I think it just takes time. I think it takes time. It takes circumstance. And that's what advances a civilization. If
You
we
well, hold on.
disappeared
This is basically
tomorrow,
saying that a
if we
species.
disappeared, if we disappeared tomorrow, the chimpanzee would be the next in line. And in 5,000, 10,000 years, they'd be walking around driving cars, scratching their head, going, "Are UFOs real?"
That's fair to think about, but open your
And it
mind to
has
the
nothing.
possibility. What if it
What if
takes a
what?
certain sequence of DNA that we haven't achieved? Not only that we're not there, but a part of DNA that we haven't mutated to, or something that's not in the DNA that gives us the ability to see something we don't see. That is why we're not overcoming the point we're at.
Dogs see stuff we don't see.
And then see
Cats
it in
see
different
stuff we don't
colors.
see. Hell, there's ghost hunters telling us that dogs see ghosts and we don't. Does that mean that dogs can see into a completely different alternate universe? Possibly. Maybe there's alternate universes all around us. Maybe there's creatures all around us. Remember that episode of what was it? The one with the circle. They traveled all across the galaxy. SG.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Stargate. I
Remember
love
remember the
Stargate.
one where right. Remember the Stargate where all of a sudden they started seeing creatures everywhere. In other words, something had happened where everybody in within a radius of the Stargate started seeing like these insects, and they were like glowing, and they were half there and half not there. You remember that episode?
Vaguely.
Okay, well, that episode was at first they thought this was an invasion of these creatures, but then they came to realize it wasn't an invasion of the creatures. We all had gotten a second sight to be able to see the creatures. Those creatures were always there.
That makes sense. That always goes to the
In
logic.
other
If you
words,
don't know what you don't know, how can you see or know
live in
something?
a different reality on a different plane of existence that shares our space and time.
I can semi go with that. Now, I want to lead into a tangent that I find very interesting, and I think you're the one that introduced it to me. And you love this one. Uh, how do I lead into this? So let's say the Earth is old, in, infinitely old compared to your life on it. So think about what could have happened years ago that we may have no trace of because of time. Okay?
Well, yeah,
And you
I think we.
explained this story to me, and I'm trying to kind of lead into it without giving any of it for you. But do you know which story I'm talking about?
The story of
Of an ancient.
aliens,
Tell us about our ancient civilization on Earth.
or the well, that we had ancient visitors that needed a species to mine gold and whatnot. So they took the cavemen of our race and genetically altered them to become more like us and used them. And then when they were done with us, they left. Is that what you're talking about?
That was one. You.
And the other is that, very possibly we have a history on this planet that's beyond what we have written down and read over and over. That's even pre the ice age. That there's technologies that are that our minds still can't wrap around. I mean, we have on the Giza Plateau, we have the tops of mountains completely sheared off, flattened, and no rubble around them. Literally, the rubble is not there. So even if we, as people, thousands, tens of thousands of people, using shovels, made this mountaintop flat, what did we do with the rubble? And then we have stones that are the size of 747s. I mean, we're talking about stuff 200 tons, stuff we couldn't even possibly move with the most sophisticated and powerful hydraulics and cranes we have today. And stuff is literally built on top of it, and we recognize the stuff built on top of it, but we can't explain how the stuff under it was made. And then we have stonework that is perfectly drilled and perfectly cut that we would have a problem doing today. And we are and our quote paleontologists uh, and whatnot are telling us that people with stone tools did it.
Yeah.
Interlocking blocks and perfectly drilled holes. I mean, stuff so smooth that it shines.
So all this beautiful construction and
And it's
symmetrical
still here.
planning
And
that
it's still here after
lasted for
thousands of
all this
years.
time. And you were explaining how such a civilization would have seen the coming of some of what nature has done in our past and
Sure.
has decided to leave. And I think you were the one that gave me this story, and the reason I was trying to lead into it to see if you could tell it again was because I loved the way you put it. A
I mean,
civilization that
to
advanced
say,
itself on Earth, being close to us, and knew something was coming and left, but they didn't all leave. Some stayed behind. But
right.
those that left survived, and they live in space for a while with a lack of sunlight and a lack of certain nutrients and certain things that
Oh,
you have on Earth.
right,
And
yeah.
then
The,
after a certain
the,
period of time, this species will change. And it ended up a question on my board too: is what would happen? Would you still be an Earthling? Would you still be a human if we began to colonize another planet? Well, what happens when you live in space and you lose the sunlight and
right.
certain effects, and you're impacted by radiation, and you spend enough time up there to be lethargic, and you don't have bones but you still have
Right.
skeletons? They're not that
You're not
strong.
tan, and you're not tan anymore. Your skin starts turning gray, and because of the low light, and even though office light is light or whatever, it's still not sunlight. So our eyes start growing bigger, and we don't really need hair anymore, and we don't really need five fingers anymore because three do just as good. and we come back and we're human alien grays.
And I thought about that for a while. I put questions on my board around that toiling in my head for days. Don't offer me something and tell me not to think about it. I'm gonna dwell on it. I'm gonna tear it apart in my head into little fragments, and I'm gonna question those fragments, and I'm gonna tear them
But you
apart.
do realize we're getting we're getting far off the topic, and the topic was UFOs.
Yeah.
And
And you're the
UFOs,
one that brought that story to me. And you
I
brought
know,
that
but
story to me when I led in with the Thunderfoot video about a 400-yard long spaceship could be sitting right next to the moon, and most people would never see it. And
yeah,
that
well,
ship
no,
could be
because
our own civilization from thousands of years ago living there. And
no,
dude, you
what
blew my
what he
mind.
was saying, what Thunderfoot was saying was the equipment like Hubble is set up to see far. So if it zooms into the moon, it can't even see the landing zone. It can't even see the tracks of the moon rover because
Right.
it's but that doesn't mean that what we have here on Earth can't see those things.
We can get in close, but
We get in very close.
you can't get in
It's
as close as you really would like to get to see if there's something there. I mean, if you get in close enough to see if there's something there and it's moving, you're not gonna, you gotta keep up with it. There's a point where our technology is kind of at an impasse. We can see close towards the surface of the moon, but we can't quite distinctify
okay.
what's on the moon from where we are.
Well, like I said, there's a couple YouTube channels that see pretty damn close to the moon, and some of the images are absolutely amazing.
I would
Um,
love to see
be,
someone who
be
has a
that as it
telescope that can
may,
watch that flag move if
be,
slightly.
be that as it may, that's still not the topic of you. Now we all know that UFOs exist because UFOs are just unidentified flying objects. So anything could be a UFO. So what we're really talking about is vehicles. We're talking about now the vehicles come down to two types. Vehicles that are man-made, that are projects that are so top secret that nobody knows about it, and you'll probably be killed if you ever talked about it.
It was a
And
weather balloon.
yeah, it was Venus coming up over the horizon, reflected by a weather balloon onto a temperature inversion that lensed it into some swamp gas that got it to glow. But anyways, then there's also aliens and alien vehicles. Now, a lot of people believe that not only aliens exist, but there are even a few civilizations of aliens that live on the planet and live among us. There's a book from the Russian Secret Service that's a book about 26 aliens that they know exist. There's aliens that look like us. There's aliens that look like they're from Sweden. In other words, blonde hair, blue eyes, tall. There's aliens that look like reptiles. There's aliens that look like the Greys. There's aliens that look like the devil. There's aliens, all different types and shapes and sizes.
No, and
Um,
I can believe that. See, and that's always a wonder of people. What are they going to look like? How do we talk to them? What are they going to speak? Are we going to be able to speak to them? So on and so forth.
a lot of them seem to be able to telepathically communicate. A lot of them seem to be able to literally dump their knowledge right into our heads.
Now, here's a fun
But
question for
again,
you,
back
Dada.
back to the topic of UFOs.
Yes, but
Um,
wouldn't telepathy be one of those genetic variants that we're not capable of? Just saying. Go
well,
ahead.
who says?
UFOs.
I mean, who says we're not capable of it? It seems to me that the people have been known to have second sight. have been known to see things from far away, or project their minds into faraway places and jot down what's there. So who's to say? But anyways, there seems to be a lot of discussion about like discs. There's discs and there's triangles. I mean, sure, there's always these lights. You always see these orbs. And the orbs are supposedly like the energy field. But the discs and the triangles, those could be human made.
Yeah.
I could elaborate if you want.
Triangles are kind of our thing right now for design for high speed. We think everything has to be triangular. We've gotten away from like rounded tips and gone everything, angles, thinking that what will help. Peace and long life, NumbedSkull. Hey, well, I'm not the bot. Stop calling her a hoe. I'm showing a picture on the
Wild
screen.
Fox got the triangle down. There it is. TR3B. Look it up.
Well, Nightbot called you a hoe. I didn't. I'm showing on the screen a picture that's called Battle for LA, I think. Or something like that.
Right. That was right after the the Hawaiian Japanese attack.
Now
we were freaking out.
Now I'm looking at this picture. Now I've seen it before, and I've read all the articles surrounding it because I'm a little into that.
The cover story on that was a dirigible, one of those balloons that were set up as viewing platforms to look for submarines offshore. A dirigible broke loose, and the whole LA basin freaked out and started firing at it, and they put, I think, something like 1,500 shells into it. There was shrapnel raining down all over the county. That was the cover story. Supposedly there was a craft, and it was recovered.
Interesting. I didn't hear about that part.
I mean, a lot of these things with the recovery of craft and whatnot, that's also a whole other thing. But I mean, we've gotten so many people to come forward on that it seems to me that would be already a given.
Here's the thing.
Pardon?
Here's the thing. And I apologize. It looks like my internet is doing that little taper off thing. I hope I don't lose you in here. When you think about alien life on Earth, here's the impending question. Would the no knowledge of existence of alien life on Earth be detrimental enough to hide it from the population? Or would it be important enough that everybody would have to know for sure?
Okay, and the answer to that is this. It's been going on for a very long time. And early on, when you had that radio program, The War of the Worlds, we all panicked. We all freaked out. People died. People were shot. It was pandemonium. And the military and the government took that into account, and that could have been a very plausible excuse as to try to keep it a secret. But I think the secrecy has become so permanent and so entrenched that at this point, 75% of the United States population believe UFOs exist, as a matter of fact. So I don't think hell, the Pope has said that if aliens exist, it doesn't mean that religion would collapse. I mean, if you've got the Pope talking about aliens, it's pretty damn mainstream at this point. I think at this point it's being kept a secret, like I said, because they need to keep a handle on the technology. This technology would literally bring us out of the Stone Age. It would literally be, I mean, imagine if you
Imagine,
were able to
imagine
not
what
pay.
you'd learn. Think about the
Well, no,
difference
imagine.
between us and a society that can reach us when we can barely leave the distance of our moon.
Well, forget about that. Imagine you not having to pay an electrical bill or a gas bill or a heat bill or an air conditioning bill or a gasoline bill for your car. Imagine that, and then multiply that by 390 million people in the country, and then multiply that by the 7 billion people on the planet, and you've got an idea of why they're trying to keep this a secret.
Yeah.
Because it would literally flip the people that are in power out of power. The people that are collecting all the wealth to now not have that currency stream overnight.
Yeah. And it's not a lot of people that would be hurt, but those people have a lot of money to be hurt for. What do they say?
Sorry?
What do they say about rich people? The thing they fear the most, or the thing they have nightmares about, is not having money.
Or not having
Or
power.
no, the
There's
thing they have nightmares about is the poor rising up to take their money.
Listen, let's face it. They'll have as much money as they, whatever money they have more money than they can ever spend. Their entire family going until they become gray aliens could spend in multiple lifetimes and generations. So at that point, when you're talking about billions and trillions, you're talking about power. When money isn't the object anymore, power is.
Fair. I'll accept that. What else do we have to talk about? I know there's more we could just kind of graze over. We don't have to get too deep.
Let me ask you this. Did you take a look on my website on my channel at the small playlist of 4 UFOs?
I can say I haven't had time the last couple of days. I think that is that the one you have the one with the ship flying over the moon on there? That's not where I saw that, is it?
What I did was I did a search for UFOs. What I wanted to do was get a search of UFOs that were from reliable sources like police and military, and also infrared. In other words, heat cameras.
Yeah.
So I've got a few of those. I mean, there's a lot more, but if you can look at those and literally tell me that those are airplanes or birds or weather balloons, I would be pretty shocked because they're pretty damn unidentifiable to me, and they sure as hell look like technology to me also.
Right.
So
it's really hard. I'm on the edge, and this is where my feeling falls, and this is where I think a lot of people are, and why they're okay to deal with it. I can 100% agree that there is probably alien life. I can with 70 to 80% certainty say we as a species have encountered that alien life at least once in the past.
Let me ask you this.
But
are you religious?
No.
Okay, but do you know anybody who is religious?
Yes.
Okay, do they need proof of God, or do they have faith?
I've had this discussion. Boy, did I give him an in-depth question, and we sat and pondered over it for a while.
Right.
They have
so I
faith,
mean,
and their faith is believing, and to not go too deep.
Right.
question I gave him is, if no one previously gave you the information of that faith, how willing would you be to believe in that faith?
Well, what if all religions were based on previous extraterrestrial meetings? In other words, okay, a UFO lands, a creature comes out. The creature can be understood by the people around it. The creature can do things that look almost magical, almost like miracles. And the creature says, you ought to do things like this and you ought to do things like that, and doing them the other way isn't really good for you or anybody else. And then they leave. Is it possible that an entire religion could be formed? Is it possible that an elite could hijack that religion and just put a large population under control? I mean, in World War II, the U.S. landed planes on these islands in the Pacific that had these native tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know, to this day, those native tribes build planes out of grass and palm fronds? They believed the plane was a god, and they were amazed when these gods would land and all this great stuff would come out of them. So even to this day, their deity is this plane shape. Kind of like, remember the first new Star Trek movie where those aliens saw the Enterprise come out of the water?
I remember that one.
So all of a sudden they started praying to the shape of the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact parallel. So I mean, we have pictures, we have oil paintings from the 1500s and the 1400s showing things in the sky people are pointing at that look like they're glowing, and rays are coming off of them. Beams are coming down from them. There are other pictures where people are inside things that look like stars in the sky.
Okay.
How do you interpret that other than
there has to be
alien
life
space
out there? The big thing is, and this goes for most people, if there's another intelligent life that can show us this, why aren't we having the conversations? Then I want to slap myself in the face, facepalm myself, if you will, and think, oh, don't offer them a straw. Make sure you give them HIV. Don't misgender them, and make sure that's most of the conversation before we even talk about the fact that, hey, how was your trip? How did you make that trip?
Do you remember, you showed that picture of the night in LA, the battle for LA. Do you have the pictures of the flyovers of Washington in the 50s?
I do not. Do you know what it was? The incident was
to as? Do you know about that?
It's not one of the ones
that
I've seen.
That in the
50s I've gone through.
What the thing was in the 50s, and we're talking about, remember, if you think back to 1950s, 1953, 57, okay, we're talking about the height of the Cold War. We're talking about the Red Scare. Eisenhower was president, and we've got, I'm not going to say a fleet, but a squadron of glowing objects flying over the Capitol and flying over Washington, D.C., which has got to be the most restricted airspace in the country. And we sent up fighters to try to chase them down, and they literally made our fighters look like jokes. And then to top everything off, they came back the next weekend.
Okay.
And this was the beginning of Project Blue Book. This was the beginning of, oh, it was a temperature inversion. Oh, this was the beginning of the military explaining everything away.
Hold on. Just a couple years ago, it came up again. And this is when I started looking into it and getting a little more information. How I know what I do know, even though it's not much. Do you know about the Pacific training missions?
I'm sorry?
The Pacific training missions, the military Pacific training exercises that we do. There is
Pacific
what
training
could be called a
exercises?
conspiracy around the joint military operations trainings that we do in the Pacific Ocean. They're routinely done like every 2 or 3 years. They schedule them out and they set them up somewhere in the summer. And then they run these missions to take a weekend. They close down the airspace above a certain area in the ocean. It's like the British, the Americans, and another country go out there and they run training
Right.
exercises. Now,
Right. The joint military training. In other words, that was also represented in that other movie. I think it was called oh, what the hell was that movie called? It was Battleship, where the Japanese and the Chinese and the Americans and the English all have like training exercises and games and whatnot. They all get together.
okay, but the conspiracy I read into, and man, mind you, it's a smaller one, and I read it last year, was something along the lines of they weren't out there doing
Hey,
what everybody was being told
hold
they're
on one
doing.
second. Do a refresh in Google Hangouts.
Am I? Am I? One
Yeah.
moment. F5. Maybe? No? You're not gonna listen? Holy. Do, 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 do. Nobody wants to stare at that little green emblem, guys. Any problems coming through to the chat? Let me know. Meanwhile, back at the hangout, I'm gonna wait for it. Ding.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
All right. So let's put you back on screen.
So okay. To get to the point, you saw a conspiracy theory about when we have these multiple country joint task force military exercises in the Pacific.
That, and I can't coherently remember this. Either we were training to defend against specific alien attacks, or we were defending against an alien attack. I forget what it was. It was something about practicing or defending against an attack.
Well, there's even papers written. There's reports written. There's procedures written on how to deal with a alien spacecraft when it comes down. Hell, I think even like the fire department has these procedures, and FEMA has these procedures written down. So I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Hell, there were FEMA games a few years back where they dressed the population up into as zombies. There's a theory that FEMA was training to kill the U.S. population. That's why they ordered 60 million rounds of NATO ammo. But be that as it may, again, the aliens that live on this planet, some of them may have lived on this planet before we even stood up on hind legs.
But that begs
This
the
may be their
question.
home.
Exactly. Are they aliens if they've lived here
Right,
since
they're not
before
right.
us?
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, if every
They took
habitable
our jobs.
if every habitable planet is like an island in the ocean of space, then do we even have a right to not share it? Because look how far away the next planet is. That would be almost like, turning away a guy on a raft.
Okay, let's not get into that analogy. That's a whole nother show. Okay? That's a
Okay.
whole nother ball of wax that we're not gonna light
So,
yet.
so, so let's get back to UFOs and alien ships and unidentified flying objects. Did you see the video I had on my channel showing a egg-shaped object farting out huge amounts of hot air?
No. I'm
And it was
thinking.
completely
No.
and it was completely invisible with the visible camera, but it was completely sharp and easily seen with the infrared camera.
I'm 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 flabbergasted. What I just want to know, don't get me wrong, and call me kind of
You know,
dumb. I consider myself relatively
listen,
low on the
you know what the
intelligence scale. I just want to know how
I
they made that trek. How did they get here? What
what do
technology
you
did
mean,
they
how did they
use?
get here? They have unlimited power. This is what we've been saying. That's why it's a secret. They can tap into 0 point energy. They can tap into the power that's all around us, that's free, that's unlimited.
Do you know what I mean, though? I want to see practical application. That's why.
Well, I
I
mean,
think
there
that's why
has
most
been,
people can't fully believe, though, is because we
but
can't
there has
identify
been.
it.
The thing is, there's been practical applications shown over and over. Hell, humankind has figured this shit out, and it's all been hushed up. It's all been taken down. It's all been trashed. Every time somebody comes up with a new energy, okay, the next thing you know, the guy is dead. His lab gets completely vandalized and stolen, and that's it. I mean, you had it happen to somebody as famous as Tesla. You had it happen to that guy who invented a way of splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen so fast that he was able to run a car on it for like ever. A gallon of water running his car 100 miles.
To think of the technology we don't
You know what
have
happened?
that we
You know
do
what
have.
happened? You know what happened to that guy? Ready for this? Him and his brother went to a restaurant with a couple people from NATO. Okay, and during the meal, he grabs his throat. He says, "I've been poisoned." He stands up. He runs outside, and he drops dead in the parking lot. Later that day, his lab is completely ransacked and everything is taken. You had guys in the 50s, they had a box. This box had one lever on it. The box was the size of a small trunk.
Call them and tell them to head this way.
There was nothing connected to it, and they had his name was Townsend, and he had strings of electrical bulbs hooked up to it. And we're talking about this guy was was touted in all the damn newspapers. Scientists came to his lab, said there was nothing going on, that this was real. And then the next thing you know, his lab was set on fire and he disappeared. I mean, this
I
has
don't
happened
see all these stories. And again,
this has happened over. Hell, and you've got even, I mean, even the stuff that isn't unbelievable. General Motors. You remember the electric car in the 80s? That egg-shaped car?
Yeah.
That they came out with?
I do kind of remember it.
Well, you don't remember much of it because there are none anymore.
No,
because
but they were kind of cool. They had the wide curved windshields.
They were kind of cool. They looked like they were from the future. They ran beautiful. General Motors grabbed them all, and even the ones on the lease program, and destroyed them all. Okay? Now, you had the General Motors exec saying the whole project was a failure. You had other people, a ground movement of people, clamoring to buy it on a waiting list. So how is it a failure?
It kind of reminds me. Now, this is all conspiracy theory stuff. So there's truth to it, but then there's always enough to make you have doubt.
This is friggin' history. You have General Motors going into a town in the 40s and buying up their street trolley system, okay, and scrapping it. You know why? They wanted to sell buses.
Okay, that
and they did it
sense.
In hundreds.
They did it in
hundreds of towns. They did it in hundreds of towns. Okay, there's your capitalism. There's your unbridled capitalism. You have the guy, you remember Tucker?
Well, it's not unbridled, but the bridles.
Nobody stopped them.
The bridles in the wrong hands most of the time. But then again, you go to the
unbridled means they're not they're allowed to do completely what they want. But I mean, what about Tucker? You have a guy who couldn't fight in the war, who was left back here, who built things for bombers. He built the electric turret for the machine guns on bombers. He was a really smart guy. Okay, he practically gave that away to the military, and then he said, you know what? A lot of these GIs are going to be coming back with a huge wad of cash. Let's build them a car of the future. Let's build them a car with the engine in the rear, with an air-cooled engine, a flat six engine. Let's build them a car that's low and wide. Let's build them a car that the front center headlight turns with the front wheels so it lights around the corner. Let's build them a car with a safety glass windshield and seat belts.
Some of those advancements took a while to catch back on again, and they died off again.
Well, the big three car makers put that into the ground, got him to go to jail for selling dealerships when there was no car in existence, and he produced enough cars to be able to prove that he was going to make the cars. Yet, didn't happen. The big three put him down. And the big three didn't want to put seatbelts in cars because, quote, they didn't want to show the population that driving a car could be dangerous.
Oh, well, let's start to wrap the show up. It's, what time is it? It's 8:15. I have a buddy coming over to pick up an air conditioner that I don't need. So I don't know when he's going to get here. With that, I think it's interesting.
When you get a chance, check out those 4 short videos of those particular craft or UFOs.
I will try and prioritize the list
let me finish one thing. Let me finish one thing up, and it's something I kind of it pissed me off. It kind of pissed me off because there's people on YouTube, creators, who used to be like into UFOs, but like have swallowed the normie, the government line. And you know what the crazy thing is this? If we ever did get a piece of video, if we ever got a piece of video that was so clear and so undeniable, who's to say that isn't a Photoshop?
That's true.
I mean, ultimately,
at this point in time, you need 3 or 4 people live videoing the entity in progress.
There have been. That's the thing. There's been so many that there have been. There was that light that was above the Temple Mount in Israel. It was filmed from 4 or 3 different angles. But it was a light. It was just a beam, not a beam of light, an orb that was literally above the Temple Mount, and then it shot up into the atmosphere.
All right, call it government-induced reverse thought pathology or something stupid. But for some reason, I can read these articles and read multiple testimonies and go, okay. But, and it's that inkling of that questioning that I have in my mind, that even though I'm pretty certain and can see proof, I still kind of look at it and go, but, you know, and it's government-induced, maybe.
You have Canada's Department of Defense Secretary, the highest military person in the government of Canada, saying to the population that that extraterrestrial craft are as real as airplanes flying in the sky today.
Okay.
How much?
Then with that, I want to hear. We're talking with them, or some of bitch, we couldn't catch them. Where did they go?
Where did they go?
Okay,
they're here.
I want to hear
they're
that
always here.
We're trying to interact, but are failing.
I think I
want to hear that we're interacting or failing, or interacting and succeeding, or are we interacting at all? And that lack of knowledge is where that question lies.
I think. Listen, I think we are. I think our government, the United States government, has already are working together with them. They're literally in bases together, working shoulder to shoulder.
On the 6th story down.
They're not going to bring this out because of the circumstances that I've told you about.
Absolutely. Oh, so much to think about. So much to let my brain just, I can't, I'm so wound I can't even talk straight. I can't even talk. Yeah.
I know. Your brain is quite overloaded.
Oh, I need to process all this information and move on to the next day. It looks like it's just us kind of chilling there. Maybe somebody's sitting in the background. We want to say thank you. We do appreciate you sticking around if you are. If not, and you're watching this on replay, thank you for coming by. Make sure you visit Dada's channel. He's got videos over there to look at. I'm going to do that at some point within the next 24 hours or so. We will have another one of these shows on Saturday.
Thank you for spending your Saturday with us.
Happy Memorial Day to Americans.
Sorry if we got off tangent. Sorry if we rambled a bit, but that's kind of what we do around here.
Where's my pet Alf?
Talking. Your pet what?
My pet Alf.
Elf?
Alf. A-L-F.
Alf.
Please
Doesn't
tell
he
me you
eat
know that show.
cats?
Yeah. I don't have any
Yeah.
cats. It would explain a lot of things.
There's an Alf on YouTube too.
Is there? I haven't seen a new Alf.
No, he isn't a television puppet. He's just a content creator.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a good Saturday. This was awesome. I think we may have to delve in deeper, and we will check on the copyrights on a few videos, and maybe finish pushing this because I ever so love
Okay,
this topic.
I'll do some research, see if I can find some pretty decent video that's kind of hard to deny. Of
Okay.
course, there's also going to be probably a few videos that everybody will say is Photoshop too. So
All right, so
you
we're
can't
gonna
please
finally
every.
do a part 2 show next Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you everybody for joining us. I don't I don't have any music, so hey, get the fuck out.